The pump is a widely misunderstood byproduct of training. Many people misconstrue the pump with hypertrophic qualities or being a necessity of training, and because of this, the pump is often chased in dedicated pump work, which is a staple of a lot of the bad bodybuilding routines which have emerged in the past 40 or so years and even are used to this day. If you think of something like 𝓣𝓱𝓮 hypermass routine, which although it will likely give you a decent pump, simply ignores other aspects of training such as relative intensity, effort regulation, exercise selection and sequencing, and promoting progression. As a response to this, many serious trainees, both for strength and hypertrophy, especially those who start training using staple, simple strength programs like starting strength or strong lifts, or even the Texas method, gain an aversion to the pump and see it as a sign of unproductive training, thinking that the pump is something only for roided up pro bodybuilders. As is common in countercultural movements, this stance is somewhat of an overreaction. Although the intent and indeed the product of this type of pumpless training is indeed better than pump-centric training, it willingly deprives itself of the mindset and benefit of what can be achieved by using the pump as a proxy for stimulus or a good workout, rather than a goal or a thing to be avoided. So with that said, let's actually talk about what the pump is. So the pump is essentially just blood engorging a given muscle because the muscle is in need of additional nutrient cycling and gas exchange. So in other words, we can see the pump as a strong sign that a muscle is working and working hard. This is important because if this is understood, you can see the pump as a way to gauge that you are having a productive workout. For instance, if you were to do curls for sets of 2, you would likely not receive a pump in your biceps at all. This is because the fibers are exhausted long before there's a chance for blood to begin cycling in and out of the muscle. Likewise, if you do curls for sets of 20, it's very likely that you will receive a pump, but your biceps might not reach fiber exhaustion. The sweet spot then, where the majority of training should be done for most people, is between 5 and 15 reps, so that instead of simply doing 2 reps and not getting a pump, or 20 reps and getting a pump but not really working the muscle, you can get a pump and work the muscle, and you can use that as a way to gauge the amount of stimulus that you're producing. Because if you're generating a pump within that intensity range of 5 to 15 reps, you can be pretty sure that 1, the muscle is working, and 2, it's being trained with proper relative intensity. This leads us to another thing. Assuming you're using the correct technique for a movement to get the most out of it, it would be very unlikely for you to avoid the pump. This means we can use the pump alongside that previously mentioned muscle fiber exhaustion as a way of gauging how good our technique is for building muscle. Using the example of a bicep curl again. It is very easy with a dumbbell curl to get an outstanding bicep pump, provided you are using a forceful lifting phase and a controlled lowering phase without over-involving the shoulder or cheating by swinging or bucking against the weight. However, with major cheat being employed, dropping the weight from the top of the curl and using a ton of shoulder, you might find that your biceps get very little, if any, pump or even sensation of having been worked at all. So some who are still skeptical of the pump being important may still ask why it should be included at all, or if it's even worth including as a factor in deciding different aspects of your training. To answer this, I have 3 potential responses. Number 1, the pump is restorative to joints and connective tissues. Anybody who knows anything about pumps will tell you that they are a sort of panacea, a cure-all for tendon issues, at least in the acute sense. So short-term tendon issues like mild tendinopathy, they're great for warming up. Getting a pump is amazing for warming up. Creaky joints or upset cartilage, and all throughout the body, so the elbows, the knees, the shoulders, hips, all throughout the spine and the rest of the back bones. There's a good reason why things like reverse lunges, reverse hypers, reverse grip pushdowns, reverse curls, and other things that probably start with reverse are known for being such a boon to the joints and connective tissues. It's because they promote blood flow and thus nutrients and healing to regions which can often be left behind. This is of such note that arm wrestlers very commonly include specific tendon restoration work where the goal is essentially getting a pump, as oversimplified as that might be. Many people also recommend to get a mild pump before you do your heavy compound movements because it helps lubricate the joints and it makes the movement pattern feel more comfortable. People like John Meadows and Bald Omni-Man come to mind as proponents of this training style. Number 2, training with the pump in mind is a productive break. So for many people who train in strength sports in particular, they spend a lot of time in the under 10 rep range or even under 8 rep range, doing a lot of work with singles, doubles, triples, 5s, 6s, and if they're like doing hypertrophy work, you might get some 8s. But what you'll find is this can be really tough on the joints and connective tissues over time. And it can also lead to a sort of stagnation in the strength that you are able to access because it doesn't promote hypertrophy as well as it might, compared to work which is not necessarily pump centric, but pump including as a factor. So if you're a strength athlete or if you're someone who chases strength, using the pump as a gauge of stimulus and including training that actually gives you a pump, doing your bicep curls, your flies, your high rep compound movements, high rep squats, high rep bench, things like that, you'll get a great pump from that. Will actually be productive in 1, helping to restore your joints as was previously mentioned, and 2, in facilitating hypertrophy, which will allow you to become stronger as you go back down from the higher rep ranges into the lower rep ranges. As a person who trains with a sort of concurrent style of training with both strength and hypertrophy in mind, having an appropriate balance of lower rep strength progression work and higher rep warm-up and hypertrophy work is vital to getting the most out of this style of training and the workouts that I actually do as part of it. Having that balance promotes the ability to, for instance, not require deloads. So if you are a strength athlete or if you interview with strength athletes, you'll find that they often need to deload it ranges depending on how advanced they are in their own particular recovery quirks, but 4 to 8 weeks, you'll find they need to take a light week or else their joints will just get really, really upset with them. But doing this concurrent style of training, which I do, I've found that at least as an early intermediate, I don't really need to deload at all because I'm keeping all of my connective tissues happy and I'm still promoting progression with strength and in hypertrophy. Number 3, the pump is actually kind of fun. Although I will confidently say that the pump should never ever be a main goal of training, the health and longevity benefits of the pump warrant its inclusion for me anyways. Notably though, is that it's actually very fun and engaging to get a pump, and it's more fun, in my humble opinion, to experience and witness your muscle becoming more full than it is to have no visible or even proprioceptive response to training. Proprioceptive is like a gigabrain word for like how you feel your muscles. So if you do like sets of 5 on bicep curls, like you might get the experience of tension, but you're not really like feeling the bicep between sets, at least for most of you. I know very few people who would actually be able to get anything out of 5 rep bicep curls. So it really isn't a sin to enjoy the pump, provided your training is otherwise productive as is. Utilizing different rep ranges, keeping your joints and tissues healthy, stimulating the muscle through tension and exhaustion, getting a pump is just icing on the cake. And one of my favorite parts of my recent arm saga has been getting an absolutely sick and huge arm pump 3 times a week. And I feel absolutely no shame in saying that. Also of note is some movements simply tend not to give very good pumps. This can be a result of the exercise, for instance, being stale, or simply not having a great mind-muscle connection, or something about the biomechanics of the exercise doesn't line up, or even your tech just isn't very good, your technique. For example, I've never actually gotten a hamstring pump from something like Romanian deadlifts or stiff leg deadlifts, and I don't get very good pumps in my mid or upper back from rows. I also don't get much of a pump from free weighted squats. I find that I might get a mild pump in my quads or in my glutes, but not really what it once was when the movement was very, very novel to me. The very last thing we have to cover is whether the pump is promoting of hypertrophy. Although I believe we can conclusively say that pumps are closely correlated with productive training, I think we should be cautious in ascribing the pump with specific hypertrophic qualities. An argument could be made that pump helps deliver more nutrients to the muscles, and there is fairly well documented scientific evidence of hypertrophy induced through metabolite accumulation. Metabolites being essentially, I don't know if it's an acid, but it's some sort of microstructure which is produced by the muscle when it's worked that makes it feel like it's burning. And the accumulation of those metabolites can apparently help with hypertrophy. Although there's likely good backing to that, I would say it's questionable whether metabolite-induced hypertrophy is worth pursuing in lieu of traditional muscle fiber exhaustion. Not to say that you can't include it as part of it, as part of your general routine. A good way to actually perhaps access some of that metabolite stimulated growth is to do your regular sets from 5 to 15 reps, and then maybe on your last set of 3 sets, include some kind of high rep finisher or partial or assisted negative as part of that movement. Very simple thing you can do barbell curls and then drop down to lighter dumbbell curls and finish off each bicep and accumulate more metabolites after your main thing. So it's like a drop set. Drop sets, mechanical drop sets, those are all ways you can make additional pump for 1, and 2, perhaps benefit from the metabolite accumulation, which I talked about. That's all I have for now. Take care, train hard, and have a great day.